Lieutenant Jason Carter sat at his workstation, his eyes focused on the small panel in front of him. The hum of the space station, which had once felt like the background of daily life, now seemed louder, heavier, as if the whole station was waiting for something. It wasn't just the usual repairs he had to finish today, it was something else. Something about the air felt different. He could feel the tension in his bones. Jason had been stationed at Nova Station for almost a year now, working as an engineer. He wasn't a soldier or a fighter, but he was just as important. The station was situated on the edge of human space, near a conflict zone. The Vrexian Horde, a brutal alien race known for their ruthless invasions, had been attacking nearby colonies for years. Earth's military was stretched thin, and Nova Station was a lifeline, a place to repair ships, maintain equipment, and provide support to those fighting in the war. Jason had grown used to the endless maintenance, routine work that kept him busy. He knew what it meant to keep things running smoothly in the background, unnoticed. But today was different. A cold breeze swept through the station's corridors as Jason worked, making him glance up. He wasn't the only one who felt it. The air was thick with unease. His comm link buzzed, and the voice of Captain Emily Hayes crackled through. "Lieutenant Carter, we need you in the holding bay now." Jason quickly stood, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. The sound of his boots echoed against the metallic floor as he walked through the hallways of Nova Station. The deeper he went, the more distant the usual sounds of the station became. Only the hum of the engines and the soft whirring of equipment remained. He arrived at the holding bay and was greeted by two guards, standing in front of a large, reinforced door. They stepped aside without saying a word. The door slid open, revealing the reason for the unease. In the center of the room, surrounded by high-tech restraints, was an alien warrior. The creature was tall, its body covered in dark, intricately designed armor. Jason had seen images of the Vrexian Horde, but seeing one in person was different. This was not a monster, as the media often painted them. This was a being, powerful and proud, though restrained. The alien's eyes, glowing a fierce blue, followed Jason as he entered. Its expression was unreadable, but there was something in those eyes and intensity that made Jason's stomach twist. The Vrexian warrior, a female, had been captured during a skirmish with Earth's forces. She was known as Talrax H, and from what Jason had been told, she was a high-ranking officer in the Vrexian army. Her reputation for battle was legendary, and yet, here she was, imprisoned, her armor damaged and in need of repair. Captain Hayes turned to Jason as he approached. "Lieutenant, we need her armor fixed. She's been a pain in our side for too long, and we can't afford to let her go back into battle with her equipment damaged." Jason nodded, trying to keep his composure. "Understood, Captain. I'll be monitoring the situation," Hayes said with a sharp look. "Do what you need to do, but stay cautious. We don't know if she'll try something." Jason was used to working with dangerous technology, and he had worked on the armor of several Vrexian soldiers in the past. Their armor was a strange blend of organic and mechanical, somehow both advanced and crude at the same time. But this fixing the armor of an actual Vrexian warrior? This was new. He approached Talrax H slowly, unsure of what to expect. The alien's eyes never left him, and he could feel the weight of her gaze. Her helmet was off, revealing a striking face, sharp features, an expression of quiet strength. Despite the chains and restraints, there was something graceful about her. Jason couldn't help but be intrigued. He bent down to inspect her armor, focusing on the damaged sections. This shouldn't take long, he muttered to himself, trying to stay focused. But the alien's presence was unsettling. Every time he touched her armor, he felt an odd, almost electric pulse, as though something was responding to him. Talrax's voice broke through the silence. It was low, smooth, but there was an edge to it. "You humans always fix things that are broken. But do you ever wonder what would happen if you let things stay as they are?" Jason glanced up at her, surprised by the question. It wasn't the kind of thing he expected from a prisoner. "I guess we just tried to make things work," he replied, shrugging. "No point in leaving something broken if it can be fixed." She studied him carefully. "You think repairing something makes it stronger?" He thought about it for a moment. "Sometimes, Maybe. I don't know. But it's what we do. We repair, we improve, and we survive. That's how we've always been. She chuckled softly, a sound that surprised him. Survival. A curious thing. Your species does it so well, but not without cost. Jason didn't know how to respond to that, so he focused on her armor again. The more he worked, the more he felt that strange pulse when his hands brushed against the metal. It was almost as if her armor itself was alive, responding to his touch in some way. He shook it off, thinking it was just his imagination, after a few minutes of working in silence. Talrox spoke again. Tell me, human, why do you fight? Jason froze, his hand on a piece of the armor. He had expected questions about tactics or military strategy, something that might give away information. But this was personal, because we have to, he said slowly, carefully. We fight to protect what's ours, to protect the people we care about. She studied him, her expression unreadable. And if there were no fight, if there were no enemies to defend against, what would you do? Jason's mind raced. What would he do if there were no war? No threats from the stars? Could he even imagine it? His whole life had been about surviving, about pushing through. He didn't have an answer. I don't know, he admitted quietly. For a long moment, there was only silence. Talrox's gaze softened, but just slightly. Maybe you should think about it, because not everything in this universe is worth fighting for. Jason didn't know what to say. There was a strange, almost philosophical quality to her words, and it caught him off guard. He had expected hostility, anger, even fear, but this was something different. Before he could respond, the captain's voice crackled through the comm link. Lieutenant, we've received word of another attack on the Outer Rim. Get that armor finished and get ready for action. We don't have time for whatever this is. Jason sighed, his focus snapping back to the task at hand. Understood, Captain. He worked in silence for a while longer, the strange connection between him and Talrox's H lingering in the air. But there was no time to explore it. As he finished the repairs and checked the power systems, the alien warrior's eyes never left him. There was a sense of something more beneath the surface, something he couldn't quite understand. Finally, the repairs were done. Jason stepped back, wiping his hands on his jumpsuit. Talrox stood, her armor fully restored, glowing faintly with energy. Thank you, human, she said, her voice quiet but firm. But remember, not everything can be fixed. Jason nodded, unsure of how to respond. But before he could say anything, she turned and walked away, her heavy footsteps echoing in the silent room. As he watched her leave, Jason couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of the war, and of something else entirely. The days following the repair of Talrox's armor felt like they dragged on, but Jason couldn't stop thinking about her. Ever since that strange moment in the holding bay when his hands had brushed against her armor, something had shifted between them. Talrox wasn't just an enemy anymore. She was different. The way she spoke, the way her eyes seemed to see right through him, made him question everything. Jason couldn't explain it. The connection between them wasn't just about the repairs or even the strange energy he felt whenever he touched her armor. It was something deeper, something almost impossible to describe. And every time he thought about it, it made him feel uneasy, like he was crossing some invisible line. Despite the war, despite everything, he couldn't ignore that there was more to Talrox's H than just being a Vrexian warrior. She was intelligent, composed, and strangely wise. But how could that be possible? Vrexians were the enemies. They were known for their ruthless conquests, their ability to destroy entire planets without a second thought. And yet, here was one, trapped in the same room as him, speaking about survival, about war, and even about peace. Jason pushed the thoughts away as he made his way to the maintenance bay again. He had a new task now, preparing for a larger operation. Nova Station had been receiving urgent reports from the outer colonies. Another Vrexian offensive was on the way. The war was escalating, and every available person and resource was being pulled into the fight. Captain Hayes had made it clear that Jason's engineering skills were in high demand. But every time he walked past the holding bay, his thoughts inevitably returned to Talrax H. She was still there, still under constant watch. He wasn't allowed to speak with her unless it was related to repairs. But he had noticed the way her gaze lingered on him whenever their paths crossed. On one particular evening, as Jason was walking to the station to continue his repairs, he passed by the holding bay again. He heard a quiet sound, almost like a whisper, from inside. His curiosity got the best of him, and he stopped, hesitating for a moment. He knew he shouldn't, but something in him felt drawn to her. Maybe it was the way she had looked at him the last time. Maybe it was the unspoken understanding that lingered between them. He took a deep breath and walked inside. Talrax H was sitting in the corner of the room, her back against the cold metal wall. She didn't seem to notice him at first, her eyes closed, but the moment he entered, she looked up. For a moment, there was a silence that hung in the air. Jason shifted uncomfortably, not knowing what to say. He had been told not to engage with her, to keep things strictly professional, but he had so many questions he didn't know where to begin. "Why are you here?" she asked suddenly, her voice calm but piercing. Her eyes were focused on him, like she was trying to see past his outer layer, to understand the real reason he had entered. Jason blinked, unsure of how to answer. I don't know," he admitted. "I guess I just wanted to see how you were doing, after the repairs." She tilted her head. "Considering him? I see." There was a long pause, and Jason could feel the weight of her gaze. He shifted, his thoughts racing. He had always been good at keeping things to himself, never letting emotions cloud his judgment. But now, he couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was happening. "I'm not your enemy. Talrox said quietly. "Not in the way you think." Jason frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're part of the Vrexian horde. You've attacked us, destroyed our colonies. How can you say you're not an enemy?" Talrox's eyes narrowed, but she didn't get angry. "Because I have seen what you cannot. Your fight is not the only one. The Vrexian horde is not what you think. The people you fight are not the ones you should be afraid of." Jason wasn't sure how to respond to that. Everything he had been taught, everything he had experienced up until now, told him that the Vrexians were nothing but invaders, enemies who had no regard for life or peace. And yet, here was one of them sitting calmly, speaking in a way that made him question everything. "Why don't you tell me who I should be afraid of, then?" Jason asked, his voice more serious than he intended. "If it's not the Vrexians, then who?" Talrax H's eyes softened, and for a brief moment, Jason saw something he hadn't expected: regret. "There are forces beyond the Horde, beyond your governments, that control the galaxy. We are all pawns in a much larger game, Lieutenant. The Vrexian Horde is just one piece of it. And so are you?" Jason was speechless. This wasn't the conversation he had expected. He had come in thinking about repairs, about getting back to work, not to hear about galactic conspiracies and hidden powers. And yet, something about her words felt true. He couldn't explain why, but he felt like she was trying to warn him, trying to make him understand something bigger than just the war between their people. "What do you want from me?" Jason asked after a moment, his voice barely above a whisper. Talrax H studied him for a long time. "I want you to understand. The galaxy is not as it seems. There are bigger forces at play, forces that neither the humans nor the Vrexians can control." Jason took a deep breath. "And what do you want me to do with that information? What can I even do about it?" Talrox smiled faintly. "You've already done more than you know." Jason frowned, not understanding. Before he could ask her to elaborate, the door to the holding bay opened with a hiss, and Captain Hayes stepped inside, her sharp eyes scanning the room. "Lieutenant Carter, what are you doing here?" Jason quickly straightened up. I told you to keep your distance," Hayes snapped. "We don't have time for this. The Vrexian forces are moving closer. Get to your station." Now, Jason nodded, his heart racing. "Yes, Captain," as he turned to leave. He couldn't shake the feeling that Talrox's words were still echoing in his mind. There was so much more to this war, to everything happening, than he had realized. And Talrax H, despite everything, seemed to know something he didn't. Jason's thoughts were a whirl of confusion as he walked out of the holding bay. The tension in the air had returned. There was a sense of urgency now, a feeling that the war wasn't just about the survival of Earth or the Vrexians, it was about something much larger. Something neither side had fully understood yet. As he made his way to his station, Jason couldn't help but wonder, was he just another pawn in this vast, unfeeling game of war? Or could he, somehow, find a way to break free and see the galaxy for what it truly was? The days after Jason's encounter with Talrax H felt like they were stretching into an endless haze. The war was still raging outside, and the pressure on Nova Station was building. Reports of Vrexian attacks were becoming more frequent, and each new wave seemed more intense than the last. Captain Hayes had kept Jason on his toes, pushing him to repair everything faster, upgrade the station's defenses, and prepare for the worst. But despite the urgency, Jason couldn't shake the thoughts of the conversation he had with the Vrexian warrior. Her words had left an impression on him more than he cared to admit. We are all pawns in a much larger game. What did she mean by that? Was she trying to manipulate him? Or was there something deeper she was warning him about? Every time he thought he had the answer, a new question seemed to rise. He couldn't help it. He had to see her again. One evening, while the station was buzzing with preparations for the next attack, Jason found himself walking toward the holding bay again. His footsteps were quick, almost automatic, as though his body knew the path better than his mind. He was supposed to be working on the station's engines, making sure they were ready for the upcoming battle. But his thoughts were elsewhere. When he arrived at the holding bay, the guards let him in without a word. Talrax H was sitting against the wall once again, her head slightly tilted back as if she were lost in thought. She looked almost peaceful. Her armor was still in perfect condition, a testament to Jason's skill in repairing it. But there was something different about her this time, an energy in the air that hadn't been there before. Jason felt it the moment he entered the room. I didn't expect you to return so soon, Talrax H said, her voice steady but not unkind. Her blue eyes flicked up to meet his. I thought you'd be too busy preparing for the war. Jason paused, caught off guard by the directness of her words. He hadn't planned on speaking to her, yet here he was. I couldn't stop thinking about what you said, about the game we're all in. He walked closer, though he didn't dare to sit. There was still a wall between them, an invisible one that he wasn't sure he wanted to break. Talrax's lips twitched into a small smile. Curious, aren't you? She said softly. It's not often a human thinks beyond their own battles. Jason frowned, unsure whether to feel insulted or impressed. What exactly is it you want me to understand? He asked, the frustration in his voice growing. You're part of the Vrexian horde. You've invaded countless worlds. How can I see you as anything but an enemy? Talrax's gaze didn't waver. She was calm, composed, as always. You still see the world in black and white. But the truth is far more complex than that. The Vrexian horde is a tool, just as your human forces are. The real power lies elsewhere, in those who pull the strings, the ones who make the rules, the ones who don't fight, but control the fights. Jason took a step back, the weight of her words settling on him like a heavy cloak. I don't understand, he admitted. You're talking about something bigger than the war. But what does that have to do with us? What are you trying to tell me? For the first time since their conversations began, Talrax H hesitated. Her usual unshakable confidence faltered for just a moment. I'm not asking you to trust me, human. I'm asking you to think, to see beyond the war we're fighting. The war that will only lead to more destruction, more lives lost. We are pawns, all of us. But you have a chance to do something different. Jason shook his head, frustration bubbling up inside him. I'm just trying to keep this station running. I'm just trying to survive. What do you want me to do with all of this? His voice was sharp, his mind struggling to catch up with the flood of thoughts Talrax H had unleashed. Talrax's eyes softened for a brief moment. Survival is important, yes, but so is purpose. So is choice. If you only survive without ever asking why, then you'll never truly live. Jason didn't know how to respond. His mind raced, but every thought felt like it was being swallowed by the complexity of her words. You talk like there's something else, something that can change all of this. There is. Talrax H replied, her voice calm. But not by your hand alone. Not by mine either. There are others out there, beyond the Vrexian horde and your human fleets. If you're willing to see them, if you're willing to change your perspective. Jason's heart raced. And what if I'm not? He asked, suddenly fearful of what this would mean. What if she was right? What if everything he had ever known was a lie? Talrox's expression remained unreadable, but her voice softened, almost gently. Then the war will continue, and nothing will change. You will keep fighting. The Vrexians will keep fighting, and all you will have is a pile of broken dreams and ruined lives for a long moment. Jason didn't say anything. He just stood there, processing her words, trying to make sense of the chaos she had dropped into his life. He had always believed in the black and white simplicity of the war. Earth versus the Vrexians. Good versus evil. But what if there was more to it? What if there was something beyond the battles, beyond the enemies, that none of them could see? As if sensing his confusion, Talrox spoke again. You think too small, Lieutenant. The universe is vast, and you are only seeing one tiny corner of it. There is so much more than this fight. Jason wanted to argue, to say something, anything that would convince him that everything he had been fighting for wasn't in vain. But the truth was, he didn't have an answer. He didn't know if she was lying or telling the truth. But what if she was right? What if there was a larger game being played? One that neither humanity nor the Vrexians fully understood. I need to go, Jason finally said, his voice quiet. There's too much going on right now. Talrox didn't stop him. She only nodded. You will go. But remember this, human, the choice is yours. The world you see now, the one you're fighting for, it's not the only world there is. Jason turned, his mind spinning as he walked out of the holding bay. He didn't know what to think anymore. He had gone in expecting answers, but instead, he had left with more questions than ever before. Talrax H had given him a glimpse into something he wasn't ready to understand. Something beyond the simple war that had consumed his life for so long. As he walked back to his station, he could feel the weight of her words pressing against him. He wasn't just a soldier. He wasn't just an engineer. He was a part of something much larger, something that would soon change the course of everything. And the more he thought about it, the more Jason realized that Talrax H was right. The universe was vast, and it was up to him to decide how he would navigate it. The days after Jason's conversation with Talrax H were filled with confusion and doubt. The war outside Nova Station was intensifying, and Captain Hayes made it clear that they couldn't afford to lose focus. Earth's forces were preparing for an all-out offensive against the Vrexian horde, and every engineer, every soldier, was expected to contribute to the effort. Jason worked tirelessly in the station's engine room, monitoring the power systems, repairing shields, and ensuring that the station's defenses were in top condition. But no matter how hard he worked, his thoughts kept drifting back to Talrax H. The more he thought about their conversation, the more he questioned his place in this war. Was he just another soldier? Was he part of the endless cycle of violence, with no end in sight? The connection between them wasn't something Jason had expected, but it had opened his eyes to a world of possibilities he had never considered. The Vrexian horde was the enemy, but Talrax H had shown him a side of the conflict that went beyond the battlefield. She had spoken of power and control, of unseen forces shaping the war, and Jason couldn't help but feel that there was more to the story than either side was willing to admit. He found himself standing in front of the holding bay once again, the weight of his thoughts pressing against him. His hand hovered over the door's control panel, but before he could press the button, he heard the sound of footsteps behind him. Lieutenant Carter, Captain Hayes called, her voice sharp and firm. I need you in the briefing room now. Jason turned and nodded. Yes, Captain. They walked together in silence, Hayes leading the way through the corridors of the station. The lights above flickered as the hum of the station's engines filled the air. It wasn't a comforting sound, but Jason had grown used to it. This was their home now, a base of operations in the midst of a war that seemed endless. When they entered the briefing room, Jason saw that the room was already filled with high-ranking officers and military strategists. The large screen on the wall displayed a map of the galaxy. with various red markers indicating the locations of recent Vrexian attacks. Jason took a seat, his mind still heavy with the thoughts of Taurox's words. "All right, listen up," Captain Hayes began, her voice commanding attention. "We've received intel that the Vrexian horde is massing its forces near the Outer Rim. They're planning a large-scale assault, and we need to be ready. Our task is to repel the invasion and secure the sector. This is the turning point of the war, people. If we fail, we lose everything." Jason felt the tension in the room. Every officer in the room knew how high the stakes were. Failure was not an option. "Lieutenant Carter," Hayes said, turning to him, "I need you to make sure our defenses are ready. The enemy will be bringing everything they have, and we can't afford any surprises." Jason nodded. "Understood, Captain." As the briefing continued, Jason's mind wandered. He had seen this scenario before. These were the same orders, the same preparations, the battle plans, the strategy, the logistics. But this time, something felt different. The conversation with Taurox H kept playing in his mind, and it made him question the decisions he was about to make. Was this the only way to end the war? Was there another option, a path that didn't require more bloodshed? After the briefing ended, Jason returned to his station. He spent hours running simulations, making sure the station's defenses were in optimal condition. But no matter how much he worked, he couldn't escape the nagging feeling that something was wrong. The Vrexians weren't just enemies, they were part of something larger, something far more complex. And yet, every time Jason tried to make sense of it, the solution always seemed to lead back to fighting Dot as the hours passed. The station buzzed with the frantic energy of preparations. Soldiers were gearing up, engineers were making last-minute adjustments, and commanders were finalizing their strategies. The Vrexian offensive was approaching quickly, and there was no time to waste. Jason stood on the observation deck, looking out at the vastness of space. His thoughts were a jumble of confusion, frustration, and a deep sense of helplessness. He had always believed in the cause, believed in protecting Earth and its people. But what if there was more to it? What if the war was just a distraction, a game controlled by forces they couldn't even see? His thoughts were interrupted by a soft voice behind him. "You look troubled, Lieutenant." Jason turned to see Taurox standing in the doorway. She was no longer restrained, her armor was fully intact, and she looked every bit the fierce warrior she had been before. Despite her imposing appearance, there was something different about her. The tension in her posture had eased, and for the first time, she didn't seem like an enemy. I don't know what to think anymore," Jason admitted. "I've been working on the station's defenses, preparing for the battle. But I keep thinking about what you said, about the bigger picture, about the war not being what it seems." Taurox stepped forward, her eyes studying him closely. "You're starting to see it, aren't you? The game. The ones pulling the strings." Jason shook his head, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "I don't know what to believe. Everything I've been taught tells me that we have to fight, that we have to protect Earth. But what if? What if we're just pawns? What if this war is just part of a bigger game?" Taurox's expression softened, and she stepped closer, her voice low but steady. "You're not just a pawn, Jason. You have a choice. You can see the truth, or you can keep fighting without knowing why. It's up to you." Jason swallowed hard, her words sinking in. He had always believed that he was fighting for something noble, something worth protecting. But now, in the face of the war's complexities, he wasn't so sure. Was he truly fighting for freedom? Or was he just a piece in a much larger game? "I don't want to fight anymore," Jason said quietly, his voice filled with frustration and doubt. "But what else can I do? What other choice do I have?" Taurox H looked at him with a mixture of sympathy and understanding. "You don't have to fight in the way you think. There are other ways to stop this. But it will take more than just strength and weapons. It will take understanding, cooperation, and a willingness to see things differently." Jason stared at her, the weight of her words heavy on his chest. Could he really believe that? Could there really be a way to end the war without more violence? Before he could say anything else, the alert lights on the station began flashing. The Vrexian fleet was approaching. "Jason," Taurox said urgently, "this is it. The time to choose is now. You can stay and fight, or you can try to do something different. But you need to decide quickly. Jason's heart pounded in his chest as the sound of alarms echoed throughout the station. The war was here. The Phyrexians were coming. He looked at Talrox, his mind racing. Was it possible? Could he really change the course of this war? Was there another way? He didn't know the answer. But he knew one thing for certain. The time for fighting had come. But how he fought, and why, would determine everything. The alarms blared throughout Nova Station, their shrill sound cutting through the silence that had settled after hours of tense waiting. Jason's heart raced in his chest as he stared at the blinking red lights above him. The Phyrexian fleet was almost upon them. All hands to battle stations. The voice over the intercom shouted, filled with urgency. Prepare for imminent attack. Jason stood frozen for a moment, caught between the gravity of the situation and the confusion that still clouded his mind. The Phyrexians were coming. They had to fight. That was the only choice, wasn't it? He had spent so long preparing for this moment, working tirelessly to get the station ready for the war. But now, standing in the observation deck, he felt different. The certainty he had always carried with him was gone. Talrox's words echoed in his mind. You have a choice. You don't have to fight in the way you think. The battle was about to begin. But Jason was no longer sure if he wanted to fight at all. His fingers tightened around the railing as the noise of the station's activity intensified. The engineers were running, soldiers were getting into position, and everyone was preparing for the inevitable. But Jason? He didn't know what role he was supposed to play anymore. Was he just another pawn? Or could he do something more? Jason, Talrox's voice broke through his thoughts, soft but firm. He hadn't realized she had followed him to the observation deck until now. She was standing just behind him, her posture straight, her eyes focused on the chaos below. Jason turned to face her. I don't know what to do anymore, he admitted, his voice strained. I've been preparing for this my whole life. I've been taught to fight, to protect, but now I don't know if that's enough. I don't know if it's even the right thing to do. Talrox looked at him for a long moment. Her eyes seemed to soften, a trace of something sympathy flickering behind her intense gaze. You're not the only one caught in this, Jason. No one ever is. But you have a choice, even now. You can fight, as everyone expects you to. Or you can try something different. You can show them that there's another way. Jason shook his head in disbelief. How? How can I do that? The whole station is preparing for battle. Everyone is expecting us to fight. If we don't, we'll be crushed. There's no way we can survive without fighting. Talrox stepped closer, her expression unwavering. Survival isn't just about winning battles. It's about finding a way to break the cycle. The war, the destruction, it's all part of the same plan. A plan that keeps everyone fighting. But you can choose to change it. You can show that there's another way, a way that doesn't involve more bloodshed. Jason's chest tightened as he tried to make sense of her words. Was it really possible to stop the war? Could he stand up against everything he had been taught? He wanted to believe her, but the fear of what would happen if they didn't fight kept pushing those thoughts away. We can't just stop everything, Jason said quietly. The Phyrexians will destroy everything. They won't just stop attacking because I want them to. Talrox met his gaze, her eyes unwavering. Maybe not, but you've already seen what they're capable of. And you've seen how much destruction this war causes. How many lives are lost. The Phyrexians aren't the true enemy. They're part of a bigger system. A system that wants you to keep fighting. But what if, just for once, you stepped out of the cycle? Jason looked at her, feeling the weight of her words sink into him. The Phyrexians weren't the only threat. He had been so focused on defending Earth, so consumed by the war, that he hadn't even considered there could be something bigger at play. Something beyond the battles. I don't know how to break that cycle, Jason confessed, his voice barely above a whisper. But I want to try. I want to believe that there's something else. Talrox nodded, her face softening. That's all it takes, Jason. The desire to believe there's more. To believe that you have a choice. Just as Jason opened his mouth to respond, a voice interrupted them from the intercom. The Phyrexian fleet is approaching. All stations prepare for combat. Jason's heart pounded in his chest. He glanced at Talrox, who was already moving toward the exit. "This is it, Jason," she said, her voice low but urgent. "Whatever choice you make, you have to make it now. The clock is ticking." Jason's mind raced. The fight was inevitable, but he knew that whatever decision he made, it would change everything. He wasn't sure what the right choice was, but he couldn't keep blindly following orders without thinking. With a deep breath, Jason made up his mind. He didn't want to just fight. He wanted to find another way, but that way wasn't something he could do alone. He needed to act quickly, before it was too late. "I'll be right behind you," Jason said, his voice steady as he followed Talrax H. His heart was still racing, but there was a new sense of clarity in his mind. It wasn't the perfect answer. It wasn't even a guarantee, but it was something different, something that didn't rely on fighting until everything was destroyed. The two of them walked down the corridors of Nova Station, moving quickly but carefully. As the countdown to battle ticked away, the halls were filled with soldiers and engineers, their faces tense, their movements rushed. Everyone was preparing for the fight that was coming, but Jason had something else in mind. When they reached the command center, Jason looked at Talrax H. She nodded, and he knew what he had to do. Without a word, they moved toward the communication console. Jason's fingers flew over the controls, typing in the emergency override code. "What are you doing?" Talrax asked, her voice low but urgent. "I'm doing something they won't expect," Jason replied. "I'm going to stop the battle." The screen in front of him flickered, and a moment later, the communication system was open. Jason quickly tapped in the command to broadcast an emergency ceasefire message to both the Vrexian fleet and Earth's forces. It was a long shot, but if there was any chance of stopping the war, it had to start now. The message blinked on the screen. "This is Lieutenant Jason Carter of Nova Station. I am ordering a ceasefire. Both sides have been manipulated into this conflict. There's a larger force at work here that we must face together, not as enemies, but as allies. We must stop fighting to survive. The real enemy is the system that controls us all." Jason hit the send button. His breath held in anticipation. For a moment, nothing happened. The silence in the room felt unbearable. And then static. A voice came through the comm system. "This is Captain Hayes. What is the meaning of this?" Jason swallowed hard, but he stood tall. "Captain, it's time to stop fighting. We need to look at the bigger picture, the war, the destruction. It doesn't have to continue. We have a chance to do something different. Please, trust me." The silence stretched out, but finally, Hayes' voice came back, quiet but firm. "We'll discuss this after the battle. But if the Vrexians don't respond to your message," Jason didn't wait for her to finish. "I'm already making arrangements. There's a chance to stop this. If we don't try now, we'll regret it forever." A tense moment passed, and then, unexpectedly, a voice came through from the Vrexian fleet. "This is Commander Zaura of the Vrexian Horde. We are receiving your message, Lieutenant. We have also seen the manipulation. This war ends today." Jason felt a sense of disbelief and hope flooding through him. It wasn't over yet, but it was the beginning of something else. He wasn't just fighting anymore. He was part of a new path, a path where there was a chance for peace. And for the first time in a long while, Jason felt the weight of the future, not as a burden, but as a possibility.